Hello friends, this is Grief speaking, and today we're looking at Tier 5 of the body horror iceberg, and I have to say, typically when you get to this point of an iceberg, the obscurity can outweigh the entertainment. But man, this iceberg just keeps on giving. I mean, this tier is really chock full of just crazy interesting stuff. And some of it actually really unsettled me. I mean, just wait till you get to the Taxidermia or Walls Fallout entries and you'll see what I mean. So shout out to Dripcat once again for creating the iceberg and helping me with some of the entries. Also, big thanks to all the new subscribers. I've been in a constant state of shock just watching that number rise the last few weeks. It's really insane. I also have to say thanks to all the people who are always leaving really nice and cool comments like Rocket Girl, Daydream Fuel, and Zane, just to name a few. I love hearing from you guys, and I definitely want to give more shoutouts like that in the future, so leave a comment. Anyway, I've been yapping for way too long. Let's just get right to the skinny. Here's Tier 5. I wake up with zippers in my skin. This is a no-sleep Reddit post about a girl who wakes up one morning with a zipper in the underside of her arm. She freaks out, of course, and gets it removed via surgery, but soon after it reappears. She decides to hide it, and over the course of a few years, more zippers appear, and the old one grows longer. The story ends in a truly horrific way. She gains a lot of followers online, and eventually does a live stream. During the live stream, the oldest zipper she has, which has now grown across her entire body, gets snagged and unzips, causing all of her innards to fall out, which she desperately tries to put back inside. Well, I'm not up to date on my katakana, but this translates to 2CH, this girl's really scary, but please use your powers to somehow make her cute. It's honestly just an old ass video of the classic Ahenobarbus Henneseed image, except it keeps being altered in various and sometimes funny ways, while J-pop music plays in the background. 964 Pinocchio. This film reminds me a lot of Tetsuo the Iron Man. It follows a defective sex robot / cyborg, Unit 964, and by defective I mean he's basically thrown out for not being able to maintain an erection. Which leads me to our sponsor for today's video, Blue Chew. Just kidding. Anyway, he has amnesia and is lost in the city before meeting a homeless girl who attempts to teach him how to talk and names him Pinocchio. There's a lot of really weird stuff here, including a character that's just a huge moon-like creepy head, some freaky body horror transformation scenes, and also the homeless girl won't stop puking in the subway at one point, so it's got all that fun stuff. You might love it, you might hate it, but I think we can all agree it's better than the new Pinocchio remake on Disney+. Adventure Dog, The Dog Will Never End. This is a YouTube video that seems just like the typical Adventure Time opening, but instead of Finn the human, it's Finn the dog, and from there the theme just keeps listing characters except they're all dogs. The music turns eerie as the camera keeps panning, more and more things are now dogs, to the point that we see dog monstrosities, or as I call them, dogstrosities, and this continues to a cosmic level. Alfred's Playhouse. Alfred's Playhouse, I can say confidently, is one of the most chaotic and unsettling web animations I've ever seen. Depending on how dark your sense of humor is, it's either really funny or really sad, but probably for most people it lands somewhere in the middle. It's kind of hard to explain, but the show follows a mentally ill dog who's been traumatized by abuse and escapes to a fantasy land called Alfred's Playhouse. The show features extremely jarring animation, imagery, and sound effects. The very first episode starts off with a really dark theme song where Alfred sings about the trauma that happens frequently in his life, like waking up with blood in his bed and not knowing why, and pretending to be in a spaceship when in reality he's being sexually abused. Like I said, it's both funny and disturbing depending on your sense of humor. But it gets into the body horror in episode 2 when Alfred's injured and the bones come out of his leg. He attempts to fix it in completely unhelpful ways, like shoving crowns into it, for instance, and he also puts random staples into it before bleeding out and dying. The series was made into a full-length film, but is currently removed from YouTube due to the creator Emily Yukis apparently advocating for neo-Nazism. Well, geez, that took a turn. Anyway, I don't know about all that, but you can still find the whole series here on Newgrounds. One thing I like about the series is the fact that I never saw it, but it feels like something I could have watched back in the day, so it makes me feel that strange, false nostalgia. You know, where it's new but feels old at the same time. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. American Mary. Okay, man, this iceberg's starting off heavy, my friends. So, American Mary is a horror film about a woman who's preparing to enter into medical school and become a surgeon, but as a means of making money, starts performing underground surgeries. She performs a surgery on a girl who wants to look like a doll and has her nipples and labia removed. Mary quickly becomes a renowned underground body modification expert and performs several surgeries, including amputating and swapping a pair of twins' left arms. While all this is going on, she has her ex-mentor and doctor held hostage and is torturing him. I should probably add that the doctor actually sexually assaulted her, and I'll tell you what, he gets what's coming to him. She performs a series of involuntary body modifications on him, including splitting his tongue, altering his genitals, amputating his limbs, and suturing his mouth closed. It's a messed up movie, but that's why it's on the list. Balloonia. This is a children's book where a girl turns into a balloon and goes through the fictional world of Balloonia. The thing is, children who stay in Balloonia too long start losing their air and begin to shrivel up. I just gotta point out the funny thing about these lists being in alphabetical order is that you'll have Balloonia right next to American Mary, so it's just a funny contrast. Best haul video on the internet. The best haul video on the internet starts off as a typical makeup haul video, but then starts getting wonky really fast when the girl's eyes go wacky and a scary crying face randomly appears on her for a split second. Eyes start appearing all over her body before it ends. It's definitely a little off-putting. Beware of the Judderman. Judderman is a kind of mascot that appears in a Met Schnapps advert who kind of looks like an ice creature with a creepy head. The ad starts with the Judderman as a marionette puppet on a stage. Then things go live action as he stalks a man in the forest. Eventually the Judderman offers him the schnapps, which he drinks, and his body begins to distort. At the end of the ad, we see the man who's now a marionette himself being controlled by the Judderman. Bobby Yeah. Bobby Yeah is a very surreal animated short featuring a half bunny, half human character whose bunny ears are actually just fleshy lumps on his head. He encounters increasingly horrific nightmare creatures all in the same malformed fleshy style. There's many theories as to what the short means, ranging from the theory that Bobby is actually in hell and another that he's a drug user. It's very surreal and definitely worth an eye tag. D is for Deloused. Okay, so this is from the same dude that made Bobby Yeah and is actually part of an anthology film called The ABCs of Death 2. It's just as weird as Bobby Yeah and definitely has that signature style. It's also another one that's just open to interpretation as a lot of the imagery seems symbolic. Basically, a guy is held captive and tied down to a table. 3 deformed men who are covered in bugs are his captors. One of them has a lead pipe as a nose and a bug crawls on it and he knocks it out of his face, which begins pouring blood. The bug then grows into a much larger bug and begins eating the man's arm. The guy's now old and a new version of him is remade, but the arm that is eating his original body is replaced with a black blade on his new body. He uses the blade to cut off the heads of his 3 captors and starts feeding their heads to the giant bug's butthole, which has a creepy clown floating inside that has a panda's head coming out of its ass that eats the 3 captors' heads. Anyway, you should check it out. Don't Feed the Zombies. Don't Feed the Zombies is a classic web animation that features zombies eating people in graphic detail. There's one particular scene where a zombie's eating a person's head starting from their mouth, which is just cringy to think about. Dora the Ford Explorer. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's an animated short in the form of a commercial where Ford's new vehicle is being presented, which is Dora the Ford Explorer. Dora rolls out as a mass of flesh and blood in the form of a car. She cries out in pain and tears fill her eyes as we see that Boots has hung himself in the background. Dream of Gluttony. Dream of Gluttony is an indie game where a girl is lost in the woods and enters a nearby town for help. The town is full of people who identify as various food items and has very colorful and cheerful tone. Although something seems off. On a second playthrough of the game, things go a little different and the characters all end up secretly being psychos, like a girl named Candy that begins eating the other characters alive. Entirely presenting you. This is a web serial about a girl named Alexis who is brutally attacked and somehow survives. Not only that, but she now has superhuman abilities, including a healing factor. This allows her body to take a huge beating throughout the series, including losing her arm, a head-on collision with the truck, getting both her arms broken and dragged from the back of a motorcycle by the neck. Oh, and being stabbed twice. She also survives multiple gunshots, including one through the head. XD, hair extensions. XD stands out to me in the realm of body horror because it's not completely focused on torture, which is where a lot of these types of films go. So basically a woman's corpse is found surrounded by hair in a shipping container. While at the morgue, it's discovered that the woman's organs have been harvested. The night watchman at the morgue turns out to be a trichophile. Basically, he's a little too into hair, if you know what I mean. So he finds the woman's hair beautiful and steals the corpse, which he brings back to his apartment. For whatever reason, the corpse keeps growing hair, but not just on her head. It begins growing out of her mouth and eyes and even out of her wounds. This is where the real horror comes in from the film. Watching hair grow out of various places you wouldn't normally expect is really disturbing. So the creepy morgue guy starts selling the hair from the corpse to some hairdressers. The problem is whoever uses the hair extensions ends up being killed by the hair. So yeah, that's the bulk of it. From Beyond. Loosely based on H.P. Lovecraft's short story of the same name, 2 scientists invent a machine called the Resonator which allows humans to see beyond normal perceptible reality by stimulating the pineal gland. The device ends up malfunctioning at full power and things get wacky after that. One of the scientists slowly transforms into a more and more disturbing creature-like version of himself, and the other scientist's pineal gland pops out of his forehead, which gets bitten off at one point. Man, it's a real horror trip, and if you're a fan of 80s special effects and H.P. Lovecraft, give it a watch. Fukuuna Shoujo 03. This is an animated GIF or web video of an anime girl being restrained by a machine and flayed alive. The machine first makes laser incisions throughout her body and then pulls her body out of the pinned down skin with some entrails lagging behind as she immediately begins vomiting. It's only 46 seconds long, so if you need a short and sweet dose of gross, there you go. Horrors of Spider Island. This is a film from 1960 where the survivors of a plane crash are stranded on an island where they discover lives a giant spider. After the spider bites one man, he turns into a strange spider-human hybrid and begins killing the other survivors. Infection. Infection is a really unique zombie movie, and I don't think zombie movie is a good way to describe it. The basic plot is that a virus begins to spread through a hospital and causes green goo to leak from its victims while turning them into maniacal killers. There's a lot of mystery in this movie, and the way the story unfolds is sort of unconventional, leading it to be a big topic of discussion for J-horror fans who have a plethora of fan theories as to what the movie means. It has that familiar feel of other J-horror movies from the 2000s, which isn't a bad thing if you're in the mood for it. Inside Out Boy. Inside Out Boy is a claymation character that appeared in 5 shorts between commercials on Nickelodeon that originally aired from 1989 to 1993. The first short details how he becomes Inside Out when he goes on a swing and swings too high, going over the bar and causing his body to flip inside out, making him Inside Out Boy. Killer Condom. This is exactly what it sounds like. A condom with razor-sharp teeth keeps biting off the dorks of men staying in a hotel. I mean, I'd have to watch it to figure out what the hell's going on in this movie. Like, do they explain why the condom is a sentient killer? I don't know, so I'm going to see if I can get a hold of this movie somehow and maybe report back. Kuso. I can't believe I've never heard of this movie, but that's what the Iceberg is made for, baby. Kuso is an anthology film featuring several vignettes all centered around the mutated survivors of an earthquake that's destroyed Los Angeles. The vignettes are broken up throughout the film by animations, television static, and news reporters reporting on the earthquake. There's a lot to touch on with this one, and it could almost be a video in and of itself, but first of all, the subject matter is really dark and depressing, but with a surreal kind of humor. All the survivors we see are mutated somehow or another, usually having boil-infested skin. One story is about a boy who keeps shitting his pants and finding a huge creature that looks like an asshole in the forest, and then he starts feeding it his own shit. Another story is about a woman who develops a talking boil on her neck, and her husband convinces the boil to perform fellatio on him. I'm telling you, this is a weird-ass movie. Lily Cat. This is a 1987 anime film that is heavily inspired by both Alien and The Thing. It follows a spaceship crew who are surveying planets. While in cryogenic sleep, the ship's computer collects a sample of extraterrestrial material that gets loose on the ship. When the crew awakens, they find that 2 of them are imposters. So you can imagine how it goes from here as the crew are killed off in various ways. Litchi Light Club. I might be saying that wrong. This is a manga about a group of boys who form a school club and create life using a mix of both organic and robotic parts to form their creation, Litchi. One of the students even gives one of his eyes to help form Litchi. Maruso Aka. This is a truly chaotic and off-putting music video using Photoshop and animation to bring together nightmarish humans that are severely deformed, moving in unsettling ways. This video is so high octane and moves so fast that you could pause it at almost any moment and witness some new disturbing horror. It's pretty cool, 10 out of 10. Mystery Flesh Pit National Park. Mystery Flesh Pit was originally a world-building post on Reddit and turned into one of the most interesting and creative ARGs. It revolves around the titular Mystery Flesh Pit, an ancient and indescribably gigantic organism living underneath the Permian Basin region of West Texas and a lucrative tourist attraction sanctioned by the American government. Until 2007 when the park was shut down after many people kept mysteriously dying. The cool thing about this ARG is the presentation, where bits and pieces of the story are shown out of order through park brochures, safety pamphlets, etc. Wendigoon does a great and comprehensive breakdown of the whole thing, so I'd recommend watching his video if you want to know more about it. Pathogen X. Pathogen X is a haunted PS1 game, or a game that appears like a PS1 game but is actually modern. It's a clear homage to survival horror games of the era like Resident Evil, and shares a similar plot as the evil Delta Corps' secret lab unleashes a flurry of mutated zombies. I really like this retro stuff that appears like it actually could have come out at the time. Picadone. Similar to Barefoot Gen, Picadone is an animated short film showcasing the horror of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima, once again displaying people being killed terribly. Prince of Darkness. Prince of Darkness is a John Carpenter film about a group of Catholic priests and physicists finding the liquid embodiment of Satan held in an ancient cylinder in a church, which leaks out, possesses people, and begins killing everybody. They can't escape because a mass horde of homeless people have gathered around the church, and so they try to trap Satan in an interdimensional mirror, which is opened by a woman who becomes the physical embodiment of Satan because of all the Satan liquid has transfused into her. So now she's deformed and has special abilities like telekinesis. I swear I'm not making any of this shit up. This movie is wild. Rakurokubi ad. This is referring to a vintage ad for a men's magazine that features a Rakurokubi yokai. Yokai are a large part of Japanese folklore and are typically spirits, creatures, or demons that can be evil, good, or sometimes just tricksters. The Rakurokubi is one of the most iconic in my opinion and is basically a woman who's cursed to have her neck grow in an incredible length. This ad features one of the best practical effects I've seen concerning this yokai, especially considering the age of the ad, but anyway, it's pretty creepy. Saki Sanobashi. Saki Sanobashi, or Go for a Punch, is a possibly lost media anime that a 4chan user describes as featuring several high school girls being trapped in a bathroom and then begin to commit suicide. The user explains that the girls are trapped long enough that they begin to starve and eventually all kill themselves by either bashing their heads into the floor or scratching their necks until they bleed out. One girl apparently asks another to drown her because she couldn't bring herself to do it. The user says that they cried themselves to sleep after watching it and were traumatized. However, no such anime has been found, and apart from some faked and fan videos, there really isn't any evidence that it ever existed. I do love these kinds of things though, because it's probably a fabricated video, but I would be so hyped if it actually was found, just because it's been so long that people have been looking for it. Skins 2017. Skins is a weird-ass art film that shows the personal stories of several characters all associated with or having deformities of varying kinds. One girl has no eyes, like it's just blank skin. One kid wants to remove his legs so that he can become a mermaid, and probably the weirdest is a girl who has an anus where her mouth should be and her mouth where her anus should be. She literally has a butthole for her mouth and her chin looks like little butt cheeks. Plus they go one step further by having pubic hair around it. I mean, come on. Well, that's only a couple of examples. There are some other characters with other issues, but you get the idea. Slugs. Slugs is a horror film about killer slugs who eat people alive. What more do you need to know? Spliced. Spliced is a cartoon about a mad scientist who created mutants, mix and match critters, and other biological abominations that stood against all notions of sanity and common sense. He gets arrested for his crimes against nature, and with their master forever gone from their lives, the genetic hybrids and oddities he made with only limited knowledge of the outside world and its customs are left to form a society of their own. Of course, hilarity ensues. SpongeBob Sick Pants. SpongeBob Sick Pants is a Newgrounds animation featuring SpongeBob and Patrick being deranged psychopaths randomly killing people and constantly vomiting. At one point, SpongeBob cuts a fish's head off and makes a Krabby Patty out of it. Also, Squidward kills himself and his corpse begins to fester. Spookies. Spookies is a cult classic horror film that, in contrast to a lot of the more messed up movies on this list, is actually a pretty goofy fun time. It follows a group of partying teenagers who find an abandoned mansion and become trapped inside as a warlock tries to sacrifice the group with the intention of using their vitality to keep his wife alive. The warlock uses a Ouija board to summon all kinds of ghosts and ghouls like muckmen, small reptilian demons, giant spiders, an arachnid woman, an octopus-like creature with electric tentacles, a skeletal witch, a Grim Reaper statue, a vampiric boy in a monk's outfit, and a large group of zombies. No, seriously, that's the name of the movie. It's a 70s body horror movie where Mad Doctor, Dr. Stoner, takes on a new assistant, David. The doctor begins a series of injections on David that slowly turn him into a snake-like humanoid. The doctor's daughter develops feelings for David and tries to put a stop to the experiments once she realizes what's going on. The movie ends super abruptly. Eventually, David fully transforms into a king cobra and is being attacked by a mongoose when the police show up and can't get a good shot. Well, the daughter screams and the movie just ends. Right there, it just ends, so we have no idea what happens. Everything about this movie is kind of weird, from the title to the ending. Swallow. Swallow is kind of an interesting film about a woman who develops an impulse to eat inedible objects. She starts off with a marble and then a thumbtack and batteries. The messed up thing is she's pregnant, so when they go in for an ultrasound, the doctor's like, what is all this shit in here that's not a baby? Anyway, this progresses to the point where she chokes on a screwdriver and barely survives, and the film ends with her having an abortion in a public bathroom. So all smiles and fun here. Taxidermy. Okay, we are really getting into some strange movies on this tier, and this one is a lot to explain, but I'll try to break it down quickly. The film sort of has three parts, the first following an orderly who lives a wretched existence of servitude beneath the heel of his lieutenant. He has bizarre fantasies that sometimes become real and is just an altogether creepo. At one point he has a fantasy that he's banging his lieutenant's wife, while in reality he's having anal sex with a dead pig. Well, that's a sentence I didn't think I'd say today. Anyway, the lieutenant kills him upon seeing this, but weirdly enough, his wife gives birth to a baby boy with a pig's tail. So I guess he somehow psychically impregnated her while having sex with the pig? I don't know. So anyway, they cut the pigtail off the baby, and fast forward a couple decades, and now this boy's grown up to be a prize speed eater, and even as a coach and enters speed eating competitions. Well, there's a whole story here about him and his wife and how they got together, but essentially they have a son who, unlike his two larger parents, is very pale and skinny. He works as a taxidermist and lives a somewhat miserable life caring for his father, who's now so large that he's just stuck in a chair in his apartment with his cats. Well, the son and father get into a heated fight, and the son basically says F you and leaves, vowing to never return. After a few days, he feels bad and heads back to his father's apartment, only to find him dead with all of his innards poured out on the floor and his body being eaten by his cats. Now the skinny son is so depressed that he locks himself in a homemade surgical harness, and through the use of sedatives, painkillers, and a heart-lung machine, begins removing his own internal organs, pumping his body full of preservatives and sewing himself up. He activates the machine that decapitates him, leaving behind a preserved statue. His body is displayed at an exhibit alongside the cats and his father. I went into more detail on this one than usual, but it's such a weird movie, just chock full of gross stuff, that I felt like I had to explain the whole thing. The Beach House. The Beach House is a film about two couples staying at a beach house when the water begins having a weird texture and a mysterious fog rolls in. Basically what happens is that because of global warming, certain ancient microbes have been released from deep in the ocean that now cause an infection that causes people to turn into mutants. The mutant stuff is more toward the end of the movie, but there is a cringy scene where the main protagonist has a big worm crawl into an open wound on her foot, which she has to cut out of herself. It's a pretty cool concept and seems a little bit inspired by Lovecraft. The Butcher's Hook. This is a very dark short film featuring many dead animals being displayed in grotesque detail both in jars and otherwise. Eventually, a man's head is attached to a skeleton with really eerie music and animation. The interesting thing about this short is that it was actually lost media for a short amount of time when a Redditor reached out trying to find it. The real weird part is that he originally saw it when it aired on Nickelodeon in the 90s. Why the hell did Nickelodeon air this? I mean, then again, this was the 90s and gross out stuff was very popular at the time for this demographic. But all aside, it's actually a pretty interesting short and worth a watch on YouTube since it's only 6 minutes long. The Cry of Man. The Cry of Man is actually pretty unique. It was a mystery horror comedy show on Adult Swim that actually streamed live so that the viewers could call in and talk to the cast, which I don't believe has been done, or at least if it has, I haven't heard of such a thing. Basically, a patriarch of the rich man family, oil magnate Tank Man, disappears, and the family begins falling apart with the help of a mysterious villain. Besides some demonic possession, there's a character named Jack who turns into a grotesque orange muscle monster with a disgusting festering ear. The man in the lower left corner of the photograph. This is another creepy one from Robert Morgan, creator of D is for Deloused. It's actually much older than the other videos I mentioned, but still amazing in terms of animation. The two-part film follows a really creepy, lonely guy who feeds raw meat to a pet maggot he keeps in a drawer. He looks through a hole in the wall at his neighbor, a gross-looking woman who hangs herself. Later, the woman crawls out from under his bed as a half-maggot-looking monstrosity, and I guess the two are into each other? I don't know. The Muse ARG. This is one hell of a rabbit hole and one of the more comical and specific ARGs I've ever heard of, but basically, the Muse ARG is a story that spans several YouTube channels and websites. The main character is Alex Bale, a YouTuber who struck gold with his SpongeBob conspiracy theories. By the third conspiracy video, though, it's revealed that Alex has been feeding a monster in his garage raw meat in exchange for video ideas. In the fourth video, Alex laments just being known as the SpongeBob guy, but when he confronts his monster, the Muse says he's only managed to gain popularity because of its help and refusing it would ruin him. Basically, the Muse then begins taking over more and more of Alex's life. It's a really interesting horror story dealing with the classic struggle of an artist finding the balance between creating new art versus the tired but popular work. The Trapdoor. The Trapdoor was a British claymation show that first aired in 1984. The show is set in a haunted castle owned by an unseen creature known only as the Thing Upstairs. A blue blob named Burke lives in the castle's lower floors and does his master's bidding. The titular trapdoor is a big wooden trapdoor in the castle's floor, leading to a massive underground cave system full of monsters. At least once an episode, the trapdoor opens up and releases a monster for Burke and his friends to deal with, which causes chaos around the castle. The Void. When Sheriff Deputy Carter discovers a blood-soaked man limping down a deserted road, he rushes him to a local hospital with a bare-bones night shift staff. As cloaked cult-like figures surround the building, the patients and staff inside start to turn ravenously insane. Trying to protect the survivors, Carter leads them into the depths of the hospital where basically a portal to hell has opened up and monsters start to come out of. So you get the idea. Walls fall out. Walls Fall Out is a hard one to explain, but it's basically a really bizarre music video that shows a series of deformed people with a face deep faked onto them singing the song. I really can't explain it, and it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies to be honest, but some people say it's a masterpiece, so watch it at your own discretion. You Need Me. You Need Me is a very strange video that appears to take place in Gary's mod. It shows the player running from a shadowy creature that repeats "You Need Me" with multiple voices from the distance. Finally, the creature reveals itself to be a version of G-Man from Half-Life, only with multiple heads that sport elongated necks and a spider-like body. Okay, another tier down. I hope you guys are enjoying this whole journey as much as I am. We've only got 2 tiers left, and I'm probably just going to put them both into one video because tier 6 in particular is pretty small. I'm also planning on doing a Body Horror Iceberg Complete Edition. Basically, I'm just going to put all the videos together into one big video just so you can marathon it, and then also I can go through and add all the corrections and things like that. But I have to say, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for following along. It's been really cool, and I have some really cool content coming out after the Iceberg that I'm really excited about. Once again, the music you've heard in these intros and outros is by an artist called Kill Me Katie. I really like their stuff. I think it mixes well with my channel. Go to the Bandcamp, maybe buy a song or buy an album or something if you want to support them, or just get them for free. Either way, check them out, and I think that's all I got. So, as always, this is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.